Hi, I'm Elizabeth Joseph, part of the Amanpour team. Today joining our webcast is Beate Arnestad, director and filmmaker of My Daughter the Terrorist. And Beate has traveled the world bringing stories of international war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other stories to light and putting them to film and bringing them to homes around the world. So we're proud to bring you to our webcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for being here.
And so I guess we would like to talk to you specifically about your film, My Daughter the Terrorist. Can you tell me, I guess right off the bat, the title of the film is what's most interesting initially. What made you do a film about female cadres in Sri Lanka? And can you tell us a little bit more about the title and why you chose to follow two young women?
It was sort of a coincidence because my husband was being posted to Sri Lanka, so I had a chance suddenly to live in another country and not really work for a while, but I wanted to do sort of in-depth sort of investigations and research. And this was only a few years after 9/11, so suicide bombers were one sort of on the front line on all newspapers. And suddenly I was there in a country that had sort of used suicide cadres for many years, and people told me that these are monstrous beings. 30% of actually the suicide bombers were women. So I just started to sort of wonder, why would young women choose to become suicide bombers? And I tried to look into, to do research on it, and I found there was hardly any research on them. And then I got this crazy idea that maybe I should try to find out and try maybe to make a film about them.
Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like in Sri Lanka in the year that you went to film this?
When I was there was a ceasefire, so it was actually possible to travel from the capital, Colombo, and go north through the sort of military checkpoints and into the guerrilla-controlled areas of the Tamil Tigers. So I was able to go in there, and I was able to meet them for myself, and I was able to see how a country looks like after being in war for 20 years. Everything was just ruins and mines and incredible poverty. But I met these wonderful people, and I went in and out for about 1.5 years, and I asked whether they would allow me to make a film. And finally, they accepted that. And so I was not interested to speak to the politicians and those who governed, either the other side, but I wanted to learn more about the civilian populations and how they have suffered, and I wanted to hear their stories. In addition to when I found these girls, I also said I wanted to speak to one of the mothers to see how it is to bring up children in such environments and have children that had volunteered to become Black Tigers. Of course, the mother didn't know that her daughter was a Black Tiger then, because it was a secret. Nobody knew that they were Black Tigers, only a few of the leaders.
And can you tell me more about your two main characters that you follow in the film? Because from just the movie cover, these are two young women that I don't think many people would be exposed to, and I don't think would be able to get insight from. So can you tell me more about these two characters that you followed for your...
I think they're probably like any other young people. They had never been out of the country. They had never spoken to any foreign person before. They don't know how the rest of the world looks like, because they have mainly been victims of war. They've grown up in the front lines. They have never seen anything but war. But they were actually lovely persons. At the same time, they could be very deadly weapons. So it's at one point, they would manicure their nails, and they were spend long time in front of the mirrors and putting on clothes and to look nice and do their makeup. At the same time, they were polishing the weapons, and they were always on alert, and they had black belts in karate, and they would kill if they were asked to kill someone, they would do that without thinking. So it's sort of a combination of various things that's made these girls very different from normal kids.
And can you tell me, from your experience in speaking with them and getting to know them, what can you tell us about these female suicide bombers that the rest of the world wouldn't be able to tell?
First of all, I had kind of a sort of an addition, because I didn't know whom I couldn't make a film about everybody, so I said I had to find two characters. So I interviewed in between like 30 or 20 or 30 characters, and I chose these two both because they had a very good, close relationship, and also because both of them were devoted Catholics, and I had sort of never heard of and never come across suicide carders that were devoted Catholics. Darshika, she actually wanted to become a nun, and the other was a trained sort of a medical person. So, you know, the whole the personality was to give service to others, and somehow how they had ended up becoming suicide carders. That was, so I tried to sort of find out, you know, how is this possible? What kind of stories do they have? What kind of background do they have? And it took a very long time before they opened up, because they spoke like, in the beginning they spoke like, you know, very, you know, like military persons, and were a bit strict. And at one point I said, you can't, I can't make any film about you, because the outside world will just think you're just crazy. And that you are actually the monsters that the outside world believe you are. So they looked at me with astonishment, and then they said, well, but we're not monsters. We are human beings. And he said, we have to show me that you're human beings. Don't you have any heart? And I said, of course we have hearts. But where is it? It's here. They said, but we can't touch it, because if you touch the heart, it's so painful. They had never cried ever since they were children, you know, and they had been facing deaths probably, you know, thousands of times. They've been normal combat soldiers for 7 years. Most of the Tamil Tigers don't survive that many years as frontline combat soldiers, but those two had survived, and they've been facing deaths for years and years. So they were not really able to feel anything. And I said, well, I have to make you feel. Don't you have any feelings? And they said, yes. And I said, and I asked them, you know, if you go back to some of these places where the pain came from, would it be more easier for you to talk about this pain and your background stories? And they said, yes, let's try to do that. So when we came to, you know, Darshika took to church, and she had her story that was that, you know, she has a lot of population, they seek refuge in the churches, but the churches are being bombed. And she had lost her father, and she had actually lost everything, and you know, she saw there was no hope for her family and for the Tamils, and so that's why she decided to join. And she was very young when she joined.